Welcome to the best 5-minute wine podcast with Forrest Kelly.
I'm on the spot. Sorry, I didn't know you were doing it right this second. But anyways, all good.
The best 5-minute wine podcast.
Hi, this is Lindsay from Rimessa Riscioli and the Riscioli Wine Club.
So to be clear, we're going to Rome, the capital city of Italy. And after you go to the Colosseum and the Pantheon, the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican museums, your next stop is Rimessa Riscioli. It's a restaurant, a wine bar, a tasting room, the epitome of the Italian experience.
Yeah, so Rimessa actually, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Google to translate it, you're going to get a different answer. It can mean the boat shed, it can mean the warehouse, storage, garage. It's kind of got a variety of different meanings. The way it was born was from the concept of garage because we had done Anthony Bourdain's filming for Rimessa Riscioli in what your storage, you could kind of say, in the warehouse of Riscioli. So it was just a room that was dedicated to storing some wines, kind of acting as a cellar. It had a table in the center in case someone was sitting down, maps on the walls, books on the walls. And it was really just kind of like the garage, or the concept of vin de garage is also a commonly used phrase in the wine world, which is, kind of small artisan made wines that are literally made in garages. So the idea was working with artisans, smaller producers, and then really the Rimessa also kind of has the terminology of warehouse, and that was where we ended up putting the first Rimessa Riscioli was actually opened in the warehouse of Riscioli, which was technically illegal. Not allowed to be a restaurant in a warehouse. They're not licensed, obviously, the same way. And so we got away with it for about 6 years, being kind of like a speakeasy in a warehouse, using a hot plate to cook the pasta. But then after 6 years, the municipality said, yeah, you can't really be a restaurant inside of a warehouse. So they kicked us out and we found a new location.
So when you say speakeasy, was it really like that? It was just kind of word of mouth and you had to, say a word to get in?
Not exactly, because, it was organized through Riscioli, but it was in the warehouse of Riscioli. People would often go to the wrong Riscioli. They would go to Salumeria Riscioli, which is our main restaurant, because most people didn't even know that this tiny little place existed behind a few streets. It's only about a 3-minute walk, but you have to make a ton of turns. And so it's kind of in this little secluded little tiny alleyway. And so not really many people actually even knew. All the taxi drivers still 7 years later, 10 years later, were dropping people off at Salumeria Riscioli, not at Rimessa, because it really was, kind of a word of mouth kind of place.
So let's rewind a little bit and find out about Lindsay. You were born where?
Not far outside of Detroit, Michigan.
What led you to where you are now?
Basically, I grew up in Michigan. Obviously, there's not much wine around there, so I don't even know where my passion technically started from, except I do remember, because I started drinking wine. I shouldn't say what age because it was illegal in the U.S., but I started drinking wine at an early age. Nothing too crazy, like 13 or something, or 5. But anyways, I studied abroad in London, which I ultimately ended up tasting a couple of really good French wines, a Sancerre, a Viognier, and I didn't know if those were places or grapes. I knew nothing about those wines, and so I looked them up and I realized that there's kind of a whole world behind wine other than just the grape. And so I got home from that trip and having loved those wines, and I bought Wine for Dummies at 19 years old. It's actually quite informative, and my passion just started snowballing bigger and bigger. And then I started traveling to Napa Valley a couple of times in my 20s, loved it out there. Eventually moved out to Santa Barbara and met, if you've seen the documentary Sam, Brian McClintock, who was one of the 4 master sommeliers who was in that documentary. He had a wine bar focused on old world wines in Santa Barbara, and we became good friends. And I frequented that place at least 3-4 times a week. And he said, at some point, he said, about wine, why don't you study it more formally? So I thought, okay, that's the next logical step. So I started studying with the Court of Master Sommeliers, finished the level 1, was studying for the level 2. And really the level 2 started making me lose all of my passion for wine because it's way too technical. And I realized that nobody cares. Not even us who are interested in wine care about a lot of these technical details. And everyone I was speaking to about wine my mom especially, would just say, Lindsay, can you just drink the wine and stop talking about it? So I just realized that there was a disconnect between what I was doing, and I kind of was losing the real passion I had for wine, which was being on vineyards, which was being in nature, which was understanding what affects the taste of a wine and seeing that in person, speaking with the winemakers. And so I decided to leave my job for 10 weeks and I went to Spain, France, and Italy by myself and got down to Rome, and I actually did the wine tasting as a client at Rimessa Riscioli, and then kind of had a little 5-day affair fling style with the sommelier at the time, who was Alessandro, who's now my business partner. And yeah, we had a little eat, pray, love story for about 7 years. We ended up breaking up about 1.5 years ago, but nonetheless, we're still partners and still friends.
Welcome to the best 5-minute wine podcast with Forrest Kelly.
We continue our conversation with Lindsay Gabbard, co-founder and sommelier Rimessa Riscioli in Rome, Italy. In part 1, we heard about your journey from Michigan to Rome. Let's get the rest of that story.
Best 5-minute wine podcast.
I basically had to go back to the U.S. after my 10 weeks being abroad. And then I came back and surprised him a month and a half later and stayed out there for another 2 weeks, started working beside him pretty much every night I was there. And then after my 90 days renewed again, I came out to Italy for another 3 months and again was working beside him. And then we opened up, after we got kicked out of the old location, we opened up temporarily in a place for 8 months that had 2 tasting rooms. So I had to do one of the tastings and he did the other in the other room. And that's when we started really formally working together. And then eventually that was only an 8-month lease. So we had to find another location, and the new location we found was much larger. And so we decided to form a partnership with 4 of us with the Riscioli family for Rimessa Riscioli.
Once we're in Rome, can you kind of explain how we find the restaurant, the wine bar, the tasting room?
Sure. Most people would know Campo di Fiori. So if you come from Campo di Fiori, we're kind of, like I said, we're also still tucked away a little bit. We're not on our main restaurant, Salumeria Riscioli, is on kind of a main road there called Via di Giubenari. We are about 300 meters behind Salumeria Riscioli, going closer towards the Ponte Sisto. We're about a 3-minute walk from the Ponte Sisto, which is the bridge that connects Trastevere over towards Campo di Fiori.
So you're doing all of these activities to make Rimessa Riscioli a success. I gotta ask, how's your Italian?
I'm still learning it every single day, but I didn't know any before I came. So it's really been just since I've got here. But even the first 5 years, I was mainly speaking in English because I host the wine tastings in English, and Sandra and I spoke in English. And you can really get around in Rome without having any Italian. So really, it's not until the last few years that I really started speaking it.
Once you arrive at Rimessa Riscioli, there isn't a lack of things to do. You've got tastings, you've got the restaurants, you've got cooking classes, got the food tour, you've got private groups. Let's kind of go through all of that. When somebody shows up, what can they do?
Oh gosh, well, our dinner service actually starts at 5 p.m. We host one of our wine and food pairing dinners at 5 p.m. and at 8 p.m. And then we also offer an a la carte service at 7 p.m., more or less at 9 p.m. So we probably have, 100 seats or so in our location. So
wow.
If you can do the math there, a few turns, we have a couple hundred people coming through, probably about an average 170, at least in the evenings. But we're also open during the day for cooking classes. So add that on top, we kind of just don't stop.
Well, yeah, let me rewind a little bit. And so describe the business, because the website is very expansive. And I was going down rabbit holes left and right, just like, wow, they pretty much do everything. But basically the first part you do is what?
Yeah, we're definitely a pretty multifaceted business. We're not just your typical restaurant or wine bar. We were born from the idea of a fixed menu of wines and foods which were paired together. 6 wines paired with different fruit foods and a plate of pasta, tiramisu, etc. So that was the way we were born for about 8 or so years. That was just the concept of Rimessa Riscioli. When we opened up the new location, like I said, we had a lot more space, so we decided to add an a la carte menu. We also offered extra virgin olive oil tastings. We have now cooking classes throughout the day. We then also, after probably about 7 years ago at this point, we also created the Riscioli Wine Club. So beyond just all the services that we do in our Rome restaurant and location, people who want to kind of continue their journey with all that we do can also subscribe to our wine club, and we ship 24 wines per year from similar concepts of all the wines that we work with in the restaurant, all artisan wines from smaller producers. We do even some winemaker collaborations. So those can also be shipped across to the U.S. We have about 2,500 members in the U.S. currently.
Welcome to the best 5-minute wine podcast with Forrest Kelly.
We continue our stay in Rome, Italy, where they have a museum dedicated entirely to pasta. It starts with the invention of dried pasta, which of course allowed it to be stored indefinitely and shipped all over the world. And one of the best places to get pasta, Rimessa Riscioli. Right, Lindsay?
Exactly.
Best 5-minute wine podcast.
Visually, what do we see when we walk in the storefront? Are we opening the door and we get the bell on the top of the door dinging?
We love to call the the restaurant, we say Risciolizing. It's easier to say it in Italian, but like Risciolizing, basically, which is taking the whole room is covered from floor to ceiling, more or less, with different wines, foods, our gastronomy, extra virgin olive oils, semi-dried cherry tomatoes, all different jars, tuna, all sorts of possible things you can imagine that to eat and drink that kind of hug you around the space when you walk in, both at Salume di Riscioli and at Rimessa Riscioli. That's kind of always been the concept, is not having kind of like, decor such as like pictures. Well, actually, we have even those too, because the mother of Alessandro's son is an artist, and she has done some of our superhero paintings. So we have a fat Batman who's going into it. We have drunk Spider-Man who had too much Krug to drink and got tangled up in his own web instead of saving the world. So there's a variety of collection of superhero prints that we have on the wall. So actually, we just kind of cover you from floor to ceiling with creativity and delicious foods and wines, etc.
Being one of the co-founders, I imagine that you're qualified to do pretty much everything. But what's a typical day like for you?
I mainly run the wine and food tasting dinner at this point, but I also do a lot of other type of digital work. I manage the Riscioli Wine Club, which is more, obviously, a lot of more computer work than it is from being physically in the restaurant. We go and travel quite often, so I don't know how many times per year we're traveling throughout Italy, going to visit winemakers to select new wines for the wine club. Also, because all the wines in our wine club get a video of the producer. Every bottle has a QR code on the back. That was an initiative I implemented during COVID because I became obsessed with QR codes, so that people could, while they're drinking the bottle, just scan the QR code and have a direct access to see where the wine was made, see the winemaker who made it, learn a little bit about wine. They also can know which grape it is, how to pair it, when to drink it by, the whole story of how the wine was made. Try to make that as easy as possible for someone to access when they're drinking the wine, instead of going to a website or getting out a brochure that we put in the box.
Looking at the website, the picture looks like the main dining room. It is filled with wine from floor to ceiling, all sides. I bet you know every single one of those, don't you?
Every single one, maybe not, because we are 4 people that choose wines, and one of our colleagues is he loves natural wine, so he sometimes finds these little tiny producers, some of them his friends, the people that we get connected to, and so some of those bottles Gaetano is more the master of, but yeah, more or less the rest of them. I mean, we have, I don't know how many bottles between Riscioli, probably some 60,000 bottles in our cellars, so it's hard to know all of them.
Now, when you say natural wine, is that a category?
It's a category that's the French are trying to put some parameters around it, but it's a term that's used a bit as people please. So there's not really a proper definition around what makes a natural wine. As some people would like to say, a natural wine is vinegar. A natural wine wouldn't stop at wine. It would keep turning. If you just let it be and no one stopped and intervened in the process, it would turn into vinegar on its own. So anyways, but the general concept between natural wine is that nothing is added in and nothing is taken out. So the wine is made just to be a pure, true expression of the terroir of the region, and that is it. And those are the main words. We don't use the word natural wine so much at Rimessa. We use the word artisanal wine. Like, our wines are all made from small producers in general. Yes, we have the big stuff for when people come in and want to do a high-end tasting like Sassicaia and Ornellaia and all the ayas that we like to joke about. But basically, more of 90% of our wines are from small producers that manage their own. We don't even have to use the word estate farm, because all of our producers just farm on their own property. But they usually make about, 20,000 to 50,000 bottles maximum per year, some of them even less. And those are the wines that you don't have to worry that they're adding in all the additives, because they don't mind if one bottle is different from the other. It's when you have the wines, obviously, that are being made in the 10 million, 20 million, 200 millions per year, that every single bottle has to taste the same. And those wines are the ones that have to be manipulated to always be giving specific taste to the mass market.
Welcome to the Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast with Forrest Kelly.
Lindsay Gabbard, co-founder and sommelier of Rimessa Riscioli in Rome, Italy, continues as our guest. In our last episode, we kind of closed out with, you were talking about QR codes on your wine bottles. Tell me more about that.
The Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast.
so that people could, while they're drinking the bottle, just scan the QR code and have a direct access to see where the wine was made, see the winemaker who made it, learn a little bit about wine. They also can know which grape it is, how to pair it, when to drink it by, the whole story of how the wine was made. Try to make that as easy as possible for someone to access when they're drinking the wine, instead of going to a website or getting out a brochure that we put in the box.
So you've got a production crew that's going with you when you film these.
Oh yeah, we usually travel in about 5 people, so it's I think we spend more money on videos than we do on food in the restaurants, but nonetheless, we are definitely, Alessandro came from documentary and film and videos, so that's always been a passion of his, is more on the creative side. He's also a writer, so also in the box for the wine club, we put our little Riscioli Wine Club Times, which is where we write a collection of our stories from traveling and the things that we quote unquote talk about when we talk about wine, which is often not even wine, which sounds silly, but we like to not get too caught up in the idea that everything needs to be about the wine. We think that there's just a lot more going on around that should be spoken about than just the what's in the bottle.
Right, and wine is kind of a social lubricant and lets you expand your normal how's the weather conversations.
Exactly.
Okay, whet my appetite. Tell me what, like a typical night or a typical day, what are we looking at on the menu?
If you're eating in the a la carte menu, it's mainly Roman, but with a little bit of experimentation, because we don't want to be an exact replica of Salumeria Riscioli, which is our main restaurant. We wanted to, offer, of course, the traditional plates, because in Italy, tradition is kind of first and foremost. But at the same time, we had to put little spins on things. So on the a la carte menu, you can also find, various fish plates and, different pastas from various regions that aren't necessarily just the Roman pastas, like amatriciana, carbonara, and cacio e pepe. They'll do, we'll sometimes have even chefs come in from other restaurants that we enjoy from our visits in different regions, and we'll invite them to do a collaboration with us. So we do a lot of that. If you're doing the wine tasting dinner, which is kind of, like I said, what we were born from, it's going to be 6 different wines paired with 6 different plates of food. So you start with the different fresh cheeses, buffalo ricotta, buffalo mozzarella, buffalo, and then burrata, and then some other different gastronomy for the next, and salumi for the next 2 wines, a plate of cacio e pepe, a meatball, tiramisu, and that's it. But then, like I said, we also do a variety of different tastings for the Italians, which will also be having different chefs come in from other places as well. But we do a lot of different things. We'll have a lot of times a winemaker who just walks from table to table and brings his wines or her wines, and will just speak very generally about them and pour them as people are dining. We keep busy.
Is there a dress code?
No, not at all. We are super casual. We want people to relax. Wine for us is like water on a table, so it's not anything that people need to think about in a fancy level. We're very casual and social and convivial. We have all mainly social tables in the a la carte part of the restaurant as well, so it's meant to be relaxed.
So after the restaurant, is there something else besides I see you have a Riscioli food tour. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a tour that happens during the day, which is a way, because a lot of people don't understand. They hear the name Riscioli, but they don't understand that we're technically 4 different restaurants. So it's a way to introduce them to kind of the world of Riscioli. It's kind of turning into a universe of Riscioli these days. And so we do a stop at Riscioli Cafe to start with, to do an espresso and a maritozzo. Then we walk over to the Forno and grab the pizza al taglio, and they can kind of see where we were born as the bakery. And we take that into one of the Riscioli cellars and have some pizza and usually a prosecco or something to start off with. Then we move over to Rimessa Riscioli. We'll do a kind of like a cooking demonstration on the different various pastas, like the amatriciana, cacio e pepe, and carbonara, and they'll eat those with us for lunch as well. Have a full wine tasting paired alongside that, and finish with some tiramisu. But yeah, then they get a nice introduction to the 4 different spaces that we have, and we're also opening up a 5th one just behind Rimessa Riscioli, probably around September, which is where mainly the experiences that we offer, like the wine tasting dinner, cooking class, and olive oil tastings will happen. And then downstairs, shortly after that, we'll be opening up, I can't really call it a jazz club because it won't be licensed, I don't think, as a full jazz club, but at the same time we'll have a lot of performances and music and different kind of happenings that happen down there.
Well, we know you guys are rebels, so you're going to be pushing the envelope.
Yeah, we're in Italy. That's, rules are mainly suggestions.
Welcome to the best 5 men in one podcast with Forrest Kelly.
Fresh handmade pasta, meatballs, tiramisu, paired wines, working side by side with an expert chef. How good are the people that are taking your cooking class at Rimessa Riscioli?
Best 5 men in one podcast.
I would say 90% of them have probably, never even made homemade pasta ever before. So it's their first time even making pasta from scratch. So no, they're more beginners. It's a very light and easy cooking class. It's not meant to be a formal, master chef kind of style class. It's meant for more everyday people who are interested in, just having fun with cooking. There's also all the different pastas that are made you'll eat during after the cooking class. Some of it's demonstration and some of it's actually cooking it or making the actual pasta. It's a mix of hands-on and demonstration. And then, like I said, you eat the pastas after and have a wine pairing with a sommelier after as well.
It can get pretty boisterous, I can imagine. It just sounds like so much fun.
It's probably one of between the cooking class, if it's a daytime experience, I'd say the cooking class is probably the most popular event that we have by far. The nighttime experience, the wine tasting dinner, is also probably one of the most, for sure, the most important experience that we have. There's also a tasting that we do called Taste the Legends, which is for more connoisseurs and, really focused wine collectors and things like that. Not even necessarily. We have different levels. There's 3 different levels of it. One menu offered at $170 per person, another one at $250, and another one at $500. So the wines will vary based on the price of the menu. So some people who are really, really, really serious might want to do the higher price menu, but it's a nice chance to taste about 10, 14 wines, all paired with different dishes along the way for the people that are a bit more into serious wine tasting. We get everybody. There's nothing we don't do. There's nothing we don't cover. There's no one we can. No, and we want wine to really be something that anybody should feel comfortable approaching. From someone who understands it to be white and red all the way. We want to be able to have different levels and different ways for people to approach it.
So in your personal wine, do you have your favorites, or are you constantly tasting new wines?
I did notice, though, that this year, because people always, one of the favorite questions is, what's your favorite wine? And I said, guys, it's impossible for me to have a favorite wine when I taste hundreds of them every year. And I actually started to notice, though, that we had one particular wine that we had made as a private label for our wine club. It's a Cesanese from Lazio, made in amphora. We tasted it and bought the entire amphora because we loved it so much. And I noticed after a period of, 6 months that we have, I don't even know how many bottles of wine open every single night, and they constantly are changing. But I started to notice that whenever that bottle was open, it's called Giarocco, I was constantly going only to that bottle. And I can still say that 2 years later, I still go to that bottle when it's open. So it's really, I think say that I have kind of a favorite everyday wine at this point, but I'm always open. I love trying new things. I love tasting. Usually it happens that once you find a favorite, there's diminishing effects, because if you keep drinking the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, at some point you usually kind of lose a little bit of the luster that it had on those first couple of times that you were excited by it. So I also don't like to get stuck in a rut and drinking the same thing over. I like to let something surprise me from time to time.
In our next episode, as we continue our conversation with Lindsay Gabbard of Rimessa Riscioli, I finally get to talk about, because I try to be healthy, olive oil. And Lindsay puts her life in danger by revealing
olive oil should be made from olives, for starters. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff in Italy isn't even, because the mafia has gotten their hands into that world as well.
What?
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Then I said to my wife, for justice, we must go to Don Corleone.
Before we close out the episode, I just wanted to say thank you, as in the past 6 months been hovering around the top 200 mark of the top podcasts. There are over 2 million podcasts, so we finally cracked the top 200, and with the help of you and the episodes like Rimessa Riscioli and Lindsay Gabbard, we reached a new peak of position number 136. So thank you again for listening and supporting the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Welcome to the Best 5 Men in Wine podcast with Forrest Kelly.
Did you know when olive oil met wine at a party, they discovered they both make everything taste better? And we know how wine loves olive oil, always bringing out its best qualities. Let's talk olive oil.
Best 5 Men in Wine podcast.
I mean, olive oil should be made from olives for starters. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff in Italy isn't even, because the mafia has gotten their hands into that world as well.
What?
And so often olive oils that get exported are made from soybean oils and put a little bit of chlorophyll in there to give them that nice green color that makes them look a little more sincere, and off you go. So, in terms of what you look for, it's tough, because even the ones that say made in Italy aren't always made in Italy. But at Rimessa Riscioli, we have all the just small artisans that, again, and that's just the way we work with. We go meet them all in person before we never let someone just send a sample and say, okay, that was good, we'll take it. We go meet people. Riscioli has always done an extreme amount of research on the products and the producers and the land where things are coming from. We go and see these places. We don't just, and you can tell this because we do videos. We have probably 600 videos of winemakers and cheese makers and olive oil producers on our YouTube channel. It's a labor of love, but it's a lot of work, but it's the only way to really understand exactly what you're getting. So unfortunately, if you're just the average consumer, there's not a specific thing I could tell you to look for.
Well, yes, yeah. So you're putting the pressure on these people to produce and actually say what they are. So when you're fact checking, as you will, but I've never interviewed a winery or anything to do with wine that had a tasting of extra virgin olive oil. There's different tastings, obviously. It's not the same taste for every olive oil, right?
Oh gosh, no, that's for sure. There's something like 600 different olive cultivars from north to south, and they vary. Usually the ones that come from the north are going to be a little bit on the lighter side. The Tedesca olive is a little bit lighter that you find from Liguria. Then you get into, Lazio, Tuscan. I don't really love the Tuscan olive oils personally as much as I do some of the Lazio ones. There's Canino that I really enjoy. Those are maybe a little bit more on the kind of middle bitterness, middle spiciness. And then you get down to Puglia and Sicily, and you can start to end up having some pretty spicy, powerful, rich olive oils that maybe you wouldn't use on a salad, but you'd use more for grilling and cooking, and they just bring out the maximum flavor in everything you're cooking. The good stuff should almost make you cough, and that's kind of scary for some people because they say, why would I want to cough if it's good? But that's when it's got all the polyphenols and all of the good juju in there that makes it healthy for you.
So I see where we can shop. So everything that everybody experiences kind of there, they kind of, if they want to take it home, they can go into like a grocery store?
We basically, more or less anything you taste, you can almost bring home with you. Everything's more or less available for takeaway. For shipping, we can ship wines and foods as well. There are some restrictions based on the countries of what can be shipped in terms of that, but we have online websites, so shop.rimessariscioli.com. We also have shop.riscioliwineclub.com, and a lot of our products are now going to be even based in New York, so that wines don't have to ship from Italy. They'll also ship from New York for the U.S. customers, and that'll allow them to receive the wines in a matter of 2-3 days, or depending on where in the country, up to a week maybe, depending on where they are, instead of 3 to 4 weeks, which is the traditional shipping time for internationally for wine.
Because Rimessa Riscioli does everything top-notch, can't wait to hear about the wine club. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have 4 different levels currently. Probably they will end up becoming 3 because the Legends level is we just can't accept new members because the wines are so allocated at that level. But we basically have one that would be about 800 per year as the what we call the Essential or Level 1 wine club. Then the next one up would be around a little over 1,000 per year. The next one up would be 2,000 per year. And they're going to be 24 wines. All of them are going to include 24 wines. Based on the price point, you'll get different levels of wines. Like, for example, a Rosso di Montalcino would go in the level 1, where a Brunello di Montalcino would probably go in the level 2, and more of one that's maybe a vintage or slightly older Brunello could go in the collector's level, the level 3. But you're going to get wines from all over Italy, from, generally speaking, like I said, really small producers. We try to mix up the varietals. We almost always include a Barolo in the level 2 and a Brunello. We want to give a nice array of wines so that people are introduced to things that they're not familiar with. And all the wines in general we want to be that are not accessible in the U.S.
In the box, they're getting not only the wine, obviously, but mention the QR code, the story behind it.
The wine club is really meant to be a complete experience with wine. It's not just to be, where you get your 12 bottles of wine, you open it up, you maybe have a brochure that you flip through it, throw it in the garbage, which is what most people, I was part of wine clubs, so I know how people use them. We wanted to really bring you as close as you could be to actually being on the vineyards with us, because for us, that's where the magic happens, is walking on these vineyards with the producers, listening to them tell their story, what they're passionate about, where their family maybe came from, what got them into wine. We want you to hear it from their side of the story and to really immerse yourself in the experience and not just have it be about consuming wine. We want people to drink with care is kind of the phrase we use, which is understanding, because people also appreciate what they're drinking so much more when they know the story behind it.
Welcome to the best 5-minute wine podcast with Forrest Kelly.
So if I can't fly all the way to Rome, Italy to get the full Rimessa Riscioli experience, where can I go?
Best 5-minute wine podcast.
New York started about maybe 8 months ago at this point. So it's been open. There's an upstairs and a downstairs. The upstairs is meant to replicate a little bit more of Salumeria Riscioli, which is only an a la carte restaurant. And downstairs was meant to replicate a little bit more of Rimessa Riscioli, which is the concept of food and wine pairing fixed menus. And there's even a beautiful cellar down there, which is incredible for hosting private parties and smaller tastings. I think it hosts about 20 people or so maximum. No, and they're also now open for lunch. We have a kind of a smaller deli section as well, where people can come purchase some products for takeaway as well there. We're 43 McDougal Street, which is right in the heart of Soho.
It's just been fascinating to hear about everything that you do with such great passion and attention to detail. Looking forward in the future, have you kind of exhausted all the opportunities and how you can stretch the boundaries of imagination of what Rimessa Riscioli can do?
Oh, I mean, we do some pretty cool things. One of our biggest focuses that kind of intertwines into everything we do is on sustainability. Obviously, naturally, by working with smaller producers always in general have a little bit more of sustainability in terms of the way they farm, in terms of the way they think of the environment. So they also think more about sustaining communities. So not just sustainability for the environment, but the idea of sustaining communities. So we also, this past year, used the first sailboats to ship some of our wine club boxes from Europe. Well, the boat leaves from St. Malo, France, and it arrives in Brooklyn. But we sent 300 boxes of wine on the first commercial sailboats that launched in the last 160 years, basically. The project is with Grande Sail, and we hope to be able to continue to find unique, sustainable ways to ship. Our shipper also patented a really unique packaging for the interior of the wine boxes where we ship the wines for the wine club, made from actual popcorn. So it's completely biodegradable. So in the future, as soon as that officially can launch, we'll be, using popcorn as the interior of the wine boxes. Some people, the first time we did a test with it, some people thought we shipped them popcorn to eat, which you could eat it and you're not going to die. But it was actually meant to be the packing materials. So that's one of our biggest things is thinking about community, sustainability, green hosting for our website. Everything we do, we think about the environment. So that's probably one of the other kind of biggest initiatives that we're taking on. And we're also going to be in the future, we've bought some small vineyards, try to save them essentially, because some vineyards, they get up to 70 years old. Maybe someone's about to abandon them, and you abandon 70-year vineyards, you don't get those back for another 70 years if someone decides to replant them. And, as good of care as the previous owners did, which we're not so good about that anymore. We're getting lazier as human beings. So we've saved a couple of vineyards that we'll use for making wines for our wine club in the future, partnering with some of our artisan winemakers in those regions. And then we're also going to have a little house on some of the different properties where our wine club members can go and stay in the future. So that'll be a future project and then people can be more involved in the winemaking process itself as well, because usually people are quite curious about that. So like I said, we really try to give a full experience with everything that we do with our restaurant and wine club, etc.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
The crowd is going crazy. That's just insane that you're doing this. What you called it, Grande Sail?
Grande du Sail is the name of the company that we've worked with in the past.
How do you spell that?
GRAIN, like grain, the SAIL, sail. The winemakers take good care of the land. They farm organically, biodynamically, and then of course, the ideal situation would be like a lot of Italians do, which is they just drink locally, and things sometimes don't even get bottled. You just go to your neighbor's house with a 2-liter Livissima water bottle and fill it up from the bulk style wine that they're making, and that's it. But unfortunately, we live in a world where we want to be able to exchange culture, and we want to continue to facilitate this so that people in America can be connected to Italian wines. But this will also allow the alignment, the way the wines get shipped, because it would be really frustrating when the winemakers spend this much time caring about the environment, and then we throw the wine on a plane and And this has really been the only, or a big barge boat. And this has really been the only way that you can ship for the last 160 years, or well, even less for planes, of course. We are really excited to find alternative means to ship things in a more sustainable ways that aligns with the way the wines are being produced themselves. So that was really the exciting part for us.
I'll have more details in the show notes about how Rimessa Riscioli is trying to protect wines during transit with recyclable materials, sailboats to ship wines. In fact, their website is on a carbon neutral server. We've got one more episode as we close our conversation with Lindsay Gabbard of Rimessa Riscioli.
Welcome to the Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast with Forrest Kelly.
As we close out our episode with Lindsay Gabbard, let's talk obstacles.
Financial, if you love to throw that word out. The salaries in Italy are comical.
The Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast.
We're a very multifaceted group because we have a couple of Italians in the group. Me being the American, we think about different things from efficiency to tradition. We try to make it, we just really try to make it a nice faceted. We all have our different strengths. I was the one that thought about the QR codes during COVID, about putting them on the bottle, trying to make it as easily and accessible to get to the videos that Alessandro wanted to be promoting. Right. So we all work together. Really. No one can take all the credit.
Right, exactly. During the meeting, you mentioned QR code and he fell asleep, and then you mentioned about videos could be attached to that, then he woke up. I could get behind that now. Okay, so the last question for you is kind of biggest obstacle that like when you go to these wineries and these vineyards and you meet these people and you feel their passion and things and you find out their story behind them. So in Lindsay's life and getting to this point in where you've got so much passion with all of these different things and you're so busy, so active, was there a big obstacle that you had to overcome to get where you are?
Financial, if you love to throw that word out. The salaries in Italy are comical, you could almost say. I don't think I've ever earned as less as I have being the owner of a wine club and restaurant as I have even graduating college and doing an internship. So we're not going to talk about salaries. Thank God I enjoy so much about what I do. And thank God this country doesn't cost so much to live and enjoy your life in. Unfortunately, my job doesn't really feel, it blurs. I don't really know sometimes when I'm working or when I'm traveling and getting to go to vineyards. So I'm paid in other ways, we could say, thank God. And then of course, like the language, the thing is when you come over here and until you really speak the language, you really can't fully immerse yourself. You miss too much on the beauty of this culture. So really, I'm grateful that I had to kind of throw myself into the fire at one point because we had 2 employees that didn't speak any English, and I had to force myself to speak Italian with them. Because once you understand the language, you just open so many more doors to really understanding and really diving into the beauty of this country. And still is going on. There's another segment that we just started doing last year in our business, which is hosting wine. They're kind of wine tours, but we partner with another group of 3 women who are experts on history and culture from various regions of Italy. And we do kind of a wine, food, art, and culture tour for on average, they're about 6 to 9 or 10 day vacations, wine tours, where we go to the artisan producers and I manage more of the food and wine parts. Lily Pans manages the history, museums, and that portion of the tour. And they are absolutely incredible. So we're going to do about 4 to 5 of those per year in various regions from Piemonte to Sicily to Puglia. And I think that's going to be the ideal place that I get my mom to come visit.
Is there a website for that?
They're not launched on our website. They're on Lilypan's website, which is LILIPANS.com. And this year, I believe they are all full. There might be a few spots left in one of the first Sicily tours we're doing. And then we'll launch the next year's calendar probably in the next several months because we want to give people the ability to book about 8 months in advance. But if you're subscribed to our newsletter, on RiscioliWineClub.com, you can subscribe to the newsletter. If you're subscribed there, then you'll get all the information. Yeah, so there's RimessaRiscioli.com for the restaurants, RiscioliWineClub.com for the wine club, although we manage those side by side. So if someone reaches out to the restaurant about the wine club, no problem, or vice versa. We can still flip flop. And then of course we're on social, but we also realize that social isn't necessarily it's a little window to your business, and that's about it. So we don't really post in a crazy amount on social, but we do have Instagram. Probably the best most enriching location you can find us on is our YouTube channel, which is Riscioli, is the name of the channel. And most of those videos are going to be in Italian, but they all have English subtitles. So those can be turned on in the settings. And we also have the the English channel, which would be under Riscioli Wine Club.
Are these videos some of the videos that you're going to see on the QR code?
Exactly.
Okay.
All of those and a whole lot of other ones.
Thank you very much for your time. Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure as well. I'm glad it worked out. Okay, ciao, ciao.
The best 5-minute wine podcast.
Don't forget my favorite part.
Please like and follow. Oh.